Oh, because you're all friends.
Yeah, we're all
I like that.
Me myself fed me, so I'm good now.
Yeah, well, I'm Italian, so if you feed me every 15 or 20 minutes, I'm okay. So I'm sorry to make any corrections at all starting out, but Jacques just referred to me as a pro, and then he said Anthony is here to help out.
Well,
So
sorry,
What's that all
Anthony.
about?
Anthony Faso is a dear friend. He's an associate of ours in the firm. He's a CPA, which means he knows everything there is to know about numbers, which back up the money. Anthony actually sold his accounting practice several years ago to come and join us full time, and I'm very honored and privileged that he's part of our firm. And, you know, I could tell somebody something that I've been doing right for 40 years, but I don't have that little CPA after my name like he does. And so I say, hey, you want to hear from the horse's mouth? You want to hear from the CPA? So every time Anthony walks in the room, it costs me $1,000, but somehow he seems to get the job done. So a couple of housekeeping things. There's 2 restrooms. Then this hall, if they're occupied, you go around the corner. There's 2 more restrooms on the other side of them. Number 1. Number 2, in your folder, there's an evaluation sheet. I bring this up first because I always forget to ask for it at the end. So at the end of our meeting, if you would kindly fill out that evaluation sheet, we will allow you to leave. Okay? Thank you very much. And then thirdly, probably the most important thing, you probably know that this is a whiteboard, and this is an easel pad. I don't know why I do this to myself. Don't let me take this over there. Okay?
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how Jacques convinced you, besides the great food that we had, the gourmet food that we served you. I don't know how he convinced you to come out on this Saturday. I'm pleased that you're here. I know that half of you have already read through the material that's in your folder, so we won't need to go through that anymore. But there are going to be a few points that I'll touch on. And Anthony's used to me, and Jacques and Evie. I'm sorry, my wife Evie, the mama bear, 25 years married next month, and been the most amazing blessing that I have this saintly, godly, awesome woman in my life who keeps me on the right road. I'm going to have fun with this. So we're going to talk about a couple of things on the true and false, but before we do that, I'd like to ask you for some input, and I do this with pretty much every meeting having to do with finance and private banking. We're going to refer to this concept with different titles. So Nelson Nash, who you saw in the video, and Nelson Nash wrote the book called Becoming Your Own Banker. This book is available here. It's available on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle. You can get it probably at the library. Some people have pirated copies, so you can probably look real hard and get it for free, which I don't endorse. The book is also available on audio. The charts are really difficult on audio, but you can get the book on audio, and some people like listening to that while they're driving to work or back. So let me ask you this: what keeps you up at night concerning money?
Lack of it.
Concerning, thank you. Lack. That might be my 1 o'clock feeding. What keeps you up at night about money? What worries you? We're going to outlive it, right? Help me out here. I got 16 spots. I don't have to fill out all of them, but I usually do.
Protecting.
Protecting it.
Inflation.
You're going to get fancy on me.
Yeah. Access.
Access. Okay. Safety. You're reading from my notes, I think. Okay.
about devaluation?
Devaluation. Well, I don't think you need to worry about that at all because we have probably the greatest steward of our economy that we've ever had in the White House. No, we won't. Devaluation.
Growth, growing,
Pardon?
growing.
Growing it.
How do you grow? Got water?
We are going to talk about that for sure.
Taxes?
Taxes.
That's a dirty trick.
Taxes are easy, just don't pay them.
Oh, yeah.
Taxes are on sale right now.
Investment.
Investments. I don't know how many times I've had this chart up, and I hardly ever hear anybody say procrastination. So yes, people aren't willing to admit that. And so here's another rule. So when we talk about money, just make believe, maybe it's really true in this room, make believe that none of us has any debt. You can smile. Make believe none of us has any debt. Make believe that all the debt is out there. I mean, you know that there's people out there with debt. Our kids, our parents, sometimes our generation, whatever that generation is. Okay, we're on number 11. Anything else?
Debt.
Thank you.
Smart, I like.
Since I already said it, I'll put procrastination.
How to gift. How to gift.
Gifting.
Great.
I don't know how it always works out, but somehow whenever kids come in the picture, money does too. How do you put that in one word?
Sandwich. That's how I put it.
Is that right?
My daughter went to college at University of Nevada, Reno, actually worked after that. She actually left college and actually went to work for a couple of years. Then she went back to grad school up in Seattle. So I consider that we've been supporting her up until the last couple of years when she finished grad school, thank God. Met her husband at the same grad school, small Christian school in Seattle called the Seattle School for Theology and Psychology. Long title, small school. And then we are also blessed to have my wife's dad living with us, who will be 98
Wow.
this coming October. So you get the sandwich thing,
Yeah,
So-
you're in the middle.
and
So just say family,
Okay.
money and family.
Keeps us up at night.
and then the other word I use is boomerang.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
our kids leave, and somehow it's funny because they left as one, they came back as four.
Oh, yeah. Exactly what that is.
You know, the son or the daughter left, they got married, they got custody of the kids. When they got divorced, they bring the kids back.
Oh, yeah.
One of our associates, a middle-aged, wonderful lady, just adopted her 2 grandchildren. They're 3 and 5.
Oh, wow.
And we love being around kids. And we are all about gifting. So we care about those generational things. Those are important. I have 2 spots left, 2
Wow,
months.
let's fill them.
Your
Say what?
health.
Keeps you.
Health?
Yeah, paying for medical
Healthcare.
needs.
Medical,
Healthcare.
yeah. And then setting up for inheritance or trust, yeah.
So that tells me that you guys have been thinking about this quite a bit.
Some more numbers on
One of the things that I think is common to most people, if we personally don't have debt burdens, we are surrounded by people who do. We're surrounded by people who do procrastinate. They wait until they're 45 or 55 years old to start thinking about saving. Conversely, kids who are 25 years old who have decent jobs are saying, well, I don't need to worry about saving because that's way in the future.
Yeah.
So
Retirement.
we make all kinds of excuses as to why we shouldn't start putting money away. And the biggest reason that we need to plan is that we don't know what's going to happen in our family life, in our business life. with the economy, with inflation, with investments, with the market. We've met people who really got creamed in 2008. They took big hits. We've met people who have lost 30, 40, 50%. We've met people who've lost everything because they put all their eggs in one basket. All the stock market, because they figure, well, if it went up in the last 2 or 3 years, it's only going to go up in the future. And that might be narrow thinking. I kind of don't subscribe to that philosophy. If I had a suit on, I would have belt and suspenders, probably 2 pairs of suspenders. But just to give you a tiny bit of background, I will start my 40th year in insurance and investments this year. So we've had our teeth kicked in a lot. We've learned what works and what doesn't. I met Nelson Nash 15 years ago, and I had been in the business about 25 years at that time. And Mr. Nash, who just turned 84, and he doesn't do these lightweight seminars like we're doing today. We had him out last September. He speaks for 8 hours. And if anybody's interested, as we grow a group of people, we might get 50 or 60 people come to a seminar for Nelson Nash, and he just stands up there for 8 hours and drinks coffee and just keeps on going. 84 years old. He's been a practicing aviator, a forester, and an economist for about 60 years. Very bright man, the highest integrity, and he consults with myself, with our firm, with other professional advisors, with our clients. He'll come out and meet with a client. He's a real treasure to us, and he's gotten me to question what I was teaching my clients up to the time I met him. And when he started to ask me these questions and I didn't have the answers, it got me to thinking, well, maybe I didn't study everything that I should have been studying about money. I think what's really been happening is a lot of financial professionals, about 400,000 in this country, have pretty much been taking products off the shelf of the companies that hired us, trusted the companies when they said, this is good for consumers, go and sell it, we'll pay you. I'm just being honest with you. We didn't really think a lot about how those things worked and whether they actually work better for the client or better for the vendor who's selling the product. So then what we call this is an advanced course on money, because there are very few people, consumers, investors, or professional advisors, who actually have taken the time to learn about money, to learn about how banking works. Is that long enough for my introduction? Should I start speaking?
Yeah, it's good, yeah.
So I get excited, and the more I talk about what we do and how we do it and how we teach our clients, the more money I invest in this banking system. I do drive my wife crazy because I keep on putting more money into our bank because I want to get the outside bank out of our life. Is that something that you would agree with?
Yes.
So it really is a PowerPoint. But I'm going to try to keep this model on the whiteboard as long as I can, because this is the main model. Now we can add a lot of arrows and solid lines and dotted lines and squares and circles and triangles, but this is the main model. Now everybody in this room is already practicing banking. Everybody in this room probably has a credit card or two, or have had in the past, or they've seen one. Everybody in this room has probably at one time or another financed a car. Everybody in this room has probably at one time or another financed property. Now the way that we talk about banking is simply that we, as a group, as investors, as consumers, take our money however it's earned, whether it's commissions, fees, salaries, royalties, rents, interest, dividends, and we put it into a bank of some kind. Now that bank could be a mutual fund, it could be an insurance company, it could be a real estate investment trust. It could be any financial company that takes our money in, that repackages it and lends it back to us. But before they lend it back to us, they mark it up, don't they? And so we might make a deposit on Monday as a saver, and on Tuesday we might come into the same bank as a borrower and borrow out whose money?
Mine.
Our own. Isn't it neat? Don't you want to become a banker? Well, the thing is, you're already banking right now. What you're doing is you're delegating the banking function to somebody else. Okay, that's really important. Because you all have your own individual source of revenue. It's your job. It's your livelihood. That's where your source of income comes from. But everybody should be in two businesses. And the second business is managing that banking system, because right now you're delegating it out. And the only reason you delegate it out is because you don't have enough money in your own account to do everything that you need to do in life. Now just think of this in the most generic sense, because again, I'm not making an individual accusation at Gene, or I can't see your name behind that chair, Charles, or Jane. I'm not making an individual accusation. I'm saying we as people. So when we don't have enough money, we borrow. And the idea is, I'm going to make more money on the thing that I'm investing in so that I can pay the bank back. But what actually happens? Over time, we get into the sense of complacency and we wind up giving away about 90%. It's really, technically in this country, we're giving away 95% of our income and we're saving about 5%. Okay, as a country, we're saving about 5%. Now, I'm going to assume that the average age in this room is above 30. Okay? And I say a lot of these things over and over and over. And one of the things I say is that we teach our kids how to get into debt. And we don't teach them how to get out. It's a big issue for me. I've got kids of my own, and I've got a whole bunch of honorary kids and grandkids, people that I love and I care about. And I want to see them do better. I mean, just like our parents, the greatest generation, wanted us to do better, they didn't necessarily know how to teach us how to do that. Now, this concept will work for everybody who is in the financial system. So we have clients who are, and I always use the term school teacher. I don't know why, but I love school teachers. They're overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated, but they work for somebody else and they make peanuts. And then we have clients at the other end of the spectrum who are worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and they still want to teach their kids about banking. Because you know our kids can't wait, in only a very small sense, our kids can't wait for us to die. For one reason, which is that they get to inherit, right? But Lois, if you were a dentist, I don't know if you are or you're not, but if you were a dentist and you had 4 kids, and you wanted one of your kids to inherit your dental practice, what would that child have to do? They'd have to become a dentist. They'd have to go to college and dental school, and then they'd have to learn how to take over your business. And John, if you had an automobile dealership, and you had a couple of kids, and you wanted one or more of your kids to inherit that dealership, those kids would have to learn about the automotive industry from stem to stern in order for them to inherit and run that business profitably. Otherwise, they're going to lose it. Agreed?
Amen.
We have a very close friend whose husband, who's now deceased, gave his son, if you can imagine, gave his son a little modest trust that just happened to have $30 million in it. Less than 15 years ago. The money's gone. And the child came back and said, Dad, use that one up and I have some more. And Dad was smart enough to say no. So it's not the dollars. It's not the amount of the dollars, right? It's the wisdom and the skill. So my point about the inheritance here is that if we leave a business or a profession to our kids, they have to learn about that profession. But if we leave them $1 million or $10 million or $100 million, what do they have to know to receive the check? Can't hear you.
Go to Dave Ramsey School.
Go to Dave Ramsey School. Dave Ramsey could learn a lot in this classroom.
I believe you.
And we have some opposing viewpoints. Dave and I believe in getting your debt down to zero. We actually believe in paying the debts off, but we actually are of the Warren Buffett school of thought. Warren Buffett says that you will make more money by recapturing your debt than by buying new investments. Because Dave Ramsey says pay your debts off down to zero, and then what will you have when your debt's paid down to zero? You'll have a statement that says you owe nothing, but you'll also have nothing in your hand. I don't know if the PowerPoint's going to work. So the point is, the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 7:11 that wisdom is good with an inheritance. Whether you read the Bible or don't read the Bible, wisdom is good with an inheritance. Now, if we separate those two things, and we love our kids, and we would like to leave them an inheritance, but wouldn't it be great if we could leave them the means to transfer that wisdom to the future generations? So not only will they have the money and increase the value of the money, they'll learn how money works so that they can teach their kids a more intelligent way to address money. And if you're using a more intelligent system, you will have more money. That's not the issue. So our friend whose son gave up $30 million, he didn't run out of money because there wasn't enough money. He ran out of money because he abused the privilege. And so in my personal life, I have one daughter who is already named as one of the members of my family foundation. And she is going to be obligated to get the learning. She's only 30, so maybe she has 30 or 40 years or 50 years to learn. I'm not going to leave her a letter when she's 70 years old and I'm 95 and say, you know what, I really wish you would do such and such with the money. No, I want to teach her now the wisdom and the skill and the techniques so that she'll bring them into her life and her culture and her lifestyle, and she'll start practicing them immediately. So we're borrowing money in all ways, shapes, and forms. Credit cards, car loans, lines of credit for business. We're buying real estate. We're putting braces on our kids' teeth. We're borrowing for all kinds of reasons, aren't we? And we're borrowing money. We're paying the bank, let's say 5 to 30%, and I've seen interest rates above 30. And you all have seen, because people have bad credit at times and they have to pay very high interest rates. What's the money store called? Payday loans. I mean, it's a 200% annual interest rate, but you don't take a year to pay it off, so you're really not paying. That's just the nominal rate. It's ugly, right? But there are all kinds of rates, and then we're earning in banks somewhere between 0 and 5%, and I think that's generous.
Yeah, in Europe, it's minus.
In Europe, you pay them for the privilege of holding your money. So now, let's think about an ideal world. In an ideal world, I don't borrow money from anybody, and I use my own money to finance everything in my life. Now, here's question number one. If, hypothetically, I can borrow money from my own family bank that I control, and let's say it's my child who's borrowing money to finance a car, what kind of an interest rate am I going to charge my child? First of all, have you ever lent money to your kids? I'll take that as a yes. If you have more than one child, you have one child who pays back faithfully, you have another child who pays back kind of here and there, and you have another child who has no idea what that means. Right?
And we all know they're ours forever.
And they're ours forever, and we love them. right? But some of our kids do pay us back. And some of you have taken money out of savings and paid yourself back. Have you paid yourself back with interest? Anybody?
Yeah, 401k loan.
Because you had to. Have you paid yourself back in an ordinary savings account with interest? And if you haven't, why haven't you?
Didn't know.
Haven't, never thought of it? Give me the number one answer. Survey said?
It's my money anyways.
That's the answer. It's my money. Okay, now I want to go back to the original diagram here. I put my money, we put our money in the commercial bank. I always use Bank of America because they're the biggest. Everybody recognizes them. We put our money in Bank of America. It's our money, right? Bank of America doesn't have any money of its own. And they mark it up, repackage it, and lend it back to us. And we are people of character, so every time we sign a loan document, we pay the bank back what we owe. So we don't mind paying the outside bank the interest rate that we've agreed to, but we have a problem paying ourselves interest because it's our own money. Okay? Do you think we need to get over that? Okay. There's an article in your folder called The Real Key to Creating Wealth. And you don't need to read it now, but this is a reference to some really big Fortune 500 companies who learned this lesson in the late 80s, early 90s. And I'll use Coca-Cola as one of the examples because they're in there. And Coca-Cola was doing what you and I would like to do when we go to buy a car. What's the best way to buy a car? Cash. Now, if you read Nelson's book and if you work with us, you're going to find out that there are better ways. Because as Dave Ramsey says, you want to be at zero debt, right? Now, how about if you could be at zero debt and get all the money back? What if you could have the car and the money? Dave doesn't teach that, okay? We do. Because I don't want our clients getting to 70 years old and having a whole bunch of debts paid off, having no money in the bank, and then all of a sudden, some of these things happen. The kids come back. You mean your kids are going to come back when you're 70? I've seen it. It's happening.
I have a question.
So what Coca-Cola did was they were spending cash. They had the money in reserves in their company treasury, and they would spend it. They had to build a new plant. They had to come up with a new product. They had to initiate a new marketing program. And so they would take the cash and spend it. And then some smart aleck from Harvard, some little college in the East somewhere, some smart aleck from Harvard came back and said, a little concept called economic value added, EVA. Easy for me to remember because my wife's name is Evie.
Mm-hmm.
And the Harvard professor said, you know what, when you borrow money from the outside world, you pay them interest. When you use your own money, every dollar on the planet has a cost. Money always has a cost. So when you use your own money, you should pay yourself back an interest rate. And when Coca-Cola and CSX Railroad and Briggs and Stratton, the engine people, learned about these things, their balance sheets went through the ceiling. So we're just used to paying outsiders when we borrow their money. But now think of your family bank and say, well, when I borrow money from my family bank, I need to pay an interest rate because that money deserves to be credited interest. Who had a question? I'm sorry.
When we're cashing out a purchase of a vehicle, that's the best way to go, or zero interest on a loan while you're just making money?
That is such a basic, fundamental question. I'm going to let the CPA answer it. and he's going to answer that by going through a series. It's going to over several decades on how to finance cars through your own family bank and get all the money back. Okay, so of course paying cash is better than financing, right? Which is better than leasing. But there are a couple of methods that are better than paying cash, and we'll go through those.
I think his question had to do with zero interest loan, though, I
Yeah,
think.
I get it.
All right.
Do you think there's such a thing as a zero interest loan? We have a car guy in the room.
Yeah, there is a zero interest loan, however,
This is
the
what they say.
merchant has to buy down the loan, so you're paying for it on the front end.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, they're not giving cars away.
Right.
Right.
Well,
So they're lowering the price and they're getting at the back end, they're doing add-ons, they're giving you a higher interest rate, but giving you cash as a bonus. Somehow, they're making a profit. You just have to look for where the profit is. Our point is, whether you're paying someone the outside 0% for a car or 10% for the car, at the end of the day, you have no money in your pocket. Anybody still driving the first car they ever bought?
I think so.
Number one. Number two, anybody still have the money from the first car they ever bought? I know it's a ridiculous question. You don't have the money because you paid it out. And what we're saying is, if you learn how to, pardon the expression, respect your own money as much as or more than the outside bank's money, you will start learning how to capitalize your own bank and then borrow from it to make your purchases and your investments and build your future. I probably covered about 16 or 17 of my own slides. And
Do you have a clicker?
I have a clicker, but not in this office.
I wouldn't mind,
Okay, thank you.
if you can use a PowerPoint.
I may. I know it's Saturday, bless you. It's Saturday, so I'm feeling a little bit more at liberty to just throw up on the whiteboard. So this is kind of an illustration of how we finance things in our life. What happens is we go into debt, right? And we make the payment. And the reason why we finance anything is for one reason: we can afford the payment. And then we did so well making that payment, we said, well, I can do that again. That payment was easy. And we do it over and over again. And then there's the client that says, well, I never finance anything. I pay cash for everything in my life. Well, let's see how that works. In order to get the cash to pay for the needed item, didn't you have to save and build up that nest egg? Well, I call that a payment. You had to make a payment to your family bank. And then you spent the money, you went down to zero, and guess where you met? You met that person who was financing things, and you both met at zero. You both wound up at zero. The person who financed something paid interest or finance charges. The person who spends cash gives up the interest that you could have earned had you not spent the cash. The accountants call that lost opportunity cost. I just call it lost earnings. Do we all agree that when you spend anything, if I spend $1 for a bottle of water, I could have invested that dollar and earned money in the indefinite future? You know, one of the titles for this concept is the infinite banking concept. That's Nelson Nash's concept. Other people call it perpetual wealth code. Other people call it private family funding, which I prefer. Some people have read articles about 770 accounts. They're talking about the same identical concept. It's using a conservative method of financing your own purchases, your own investments, and your own life. So the idea here is, if you finance something or if you pay cash for something, you're still winding up at zero. You still have no money. So what's the benefit of paying cash for something if you have no money at the end of the day? Okay, so we want to try to come up with a better system than that.
There's a clicker.
Cool. Wow.
How does it work? Just like that. So the average American is spending about 10% of their take-home. Oh, 20%, good number. 20% of the take-home on car payments, which I find kind of hard to believe. It's a big number for an average person. 30% on housing costs and 40% on lifestyle. That's money going out. And they're trying like crazy to save 10%. The average savings rate in the US as of the end of 2014 was just barely over 5%. which is kind of pathetic. You know, you can't really do a lot in your future if you're saving 5%. People don't get that. Now, we're spending of that 20%, 5% of our take home is on interest on the cars. Just the interest on the cars. And we do it over and over again because we like to buy new cars periodically, don't we? And then we're spending 25% of our take home on interest on housing. Anybody here in real estate? The average home buyer turns a house over about every 7 years. And in the first 7 years of that 30-year mortgage, they're paying about 85% in interest. And so how can we get ahead, aside from the appreciation or lack thereof on the house, how can we get ahead by paying 85% in interest every 7 years?
You don't.
You don't, right? And then we're paying about 5% on the interest on our credit card payments. 5% of our take home on interest. Now, just by the way, anybody know what the average credit card balance Americans are carrying today?
30,000.
30,000.
It's actually 15,000. Now, again, why do people charge up their credit cards? Because the payment is easy. Right? And how long does it take them to pay that credit card off?
32 years.
32 years. The number one answer I usually get is never.
Okay.
Right? So I think you're pretty close. So in my calculations, I count 40 years because the actual credit card balance in the United States is going up. So by definition, if your balance is going up, you're not paying that sucker off, right? And so at a 14% interest rate, which is about what they're paying, it's about $160 a month. And over 40 years, they'll pay about $70,000 to pay off that credit card. And now, remember we talked about lost opportunity cost? If you could have earned 5% on this number, and these numbers are approximate, we do this in a calculation, but I'm already foaming at the mouth, so I can't open up the calculators. If you pay $70,000 to pay off that credit card over 40 years, you have lost the earning ability of $200,000. What's your next question? Because there is a next question. How much did the bank make by reinvesting your $160 a month at 14% for 40 years? Now, we don't care that much, but it is a lesson on lost opportunity cost. The bank, by recycling that money, yes, folks, that is $1 million. $3 million by recycling our credit card payments. But again, it's only a little credit card payment. Right? So now, look at I don't like the clicker. I just leave it places. Look at what we're sending out in interest only. 35% in credit cards, car payments, and mortgages. 35% saving maybe 10. Get it? Can you ever get ahead with this equation? Now, most of your friends and most of your kids and most of your cousins and coworkers are doing this. And that's why our country is in a mess. You know, we can't blame the government. They didn't put a gun to our head and tell us to take out a credit card. Sorry. It's our choice. Okay. So what if you could just take the interest that you're paying on cars and interest that you're paying on credit cards and stack that up on top of the savings amount you've got going into your nest egg for the future. Now you've doubled your savings. would that give you a better nest egg for the future? That's the whole idea about banking. This is gonna remind me that we're gonna talk about a car loan. I should let Anthony put some numbers in here. So, yeah, who can I use as an example? Somebody who won't embarrass me. The gentleman in the corner here. You mind if I look at your name tag, because you've got it facing down? The stealth student. David, let's, would you mind? So I'm your banker with Bank of America. And I call you up and I know that you're in the market for a car. Ouch. He's a CPA, but he's not an IT guru. You're in the market for a car. What kind of a price would you like to finance? Assuming we're going to finance a car. Just give me a number. 25,000. So you're over in the payment calculator, top left. Thank you.
Oh, I put in.
Yeah, we put them in different places. That's a negative 25. And we're going to finance that over 5 years. So I call you up and say, we've got a screaming deal. We'd like to lend you $25,000 at 6% for the next 5 years. And the reason why we could extend this loan so easily is because we already know that you've got $25,000 in a CD with our bank. And you've been a great customer for the past 75 years. And so therefore, your CD is paying 4%. Good deal?
It's the only deal we're gonna get, so.
No, we can play with the numbers. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that over the next 5 years, as you make your payment, what's your payment? At 6%, 60 months, your payment is
60%.
60%. I don't like 60%. I'll go someplace else.
How's that?
$483 a month. So future value, next, put it monthly. We usually have an intern doing these numbers, that's why. Monthly payment times 60 months. Over 60 months, you'll pay $28,999, about $29,000. You finance 25, you paid back 29. Now, when I tell you that you're going to make more money in your 4% CD than the bank makes on the 6% loan, do you believe me?
No.
Wait a minute, he's the student here.
No.
This is his final exam. Don't mess him up. He gets demerits for cheating. So you don't believe me because.
This is 4% versus the 6%.
And the 6% is bigger.
Right.
I have financial degrees after my name, so I know these things. 6 is bigger than 4, right? Actually, what happens? 25,000 at 4% over the next 5 years grows to, how'd that happen? Not entirely. Because when we did the amortization schedule for the car loan, that was 6% compound interest. Here's
decreasing balance.
Here's the key. Decreasing balance on the car loan. Increasing balance on the savings account, but nobody in the room said, I'll take the deal because I want the 4% account over the 6% account. Do you think bankers know this?
Oh, yeah.
And why don't we know it? Why didn't your financial advisor tell you that this is true? Why didn't I, after 25 years of experience in this business, why didn't I know that? Because I gave the same answer you gave when this was first shown to me. And so now what this does is this frees up a lot of things in our life. One of the things that this does for me is it tells me I can actually afford to earn at a conservative rate of interest and not chase high rates of interest because I can still make money on a low rate of interest. You're going to find as we talk about banks that banks actually don't make the same types of risky investments that you and I make. You know that the stock market, the S&P, did about 2.5% to 3% from 2001 to 2010. So it was a very anemic market period of time. I've been a stockbroker, God forbid. I've been a stockbroker for 35 years, so I kind of watch these things. But I'm here shooting myself in both feet, telling you, you don't necessarily want to have money in the market if your objective is to have steady, stable, guaranteed, conservative growth for the next 50 years. So one of the things we find out is that I can afford to invest at a low rate of interest and still make money. The other thing I could find out is that there are things about money I didn't know, even as a financial professional. And if there was one thing I didn't know, maybe there's more. I have no idea what the next slide is. I just send that forward from me. Let's find out. That works. Okay, so just, yeah, bring up the whole. So when the shareholders of a bank get together and they want to start a bank, and it's different in every state, you need about $20 million to open up a bank in Nevada. And that $20 million is not allowed to be used in lending. That is the reserve. And you know the Fed changes the reserves at different times, but they can't use that money in banking. What they have to rely on is deposits. So the way banks work is they have to bring in capital, they have to attract customer deposits, and they earn loan interest. The way they receive their income is through car loans and credit lines and so forth. So banks are operating at a pretty conservative clip, and we all trust banks implicitly, don't we? Because
They're our friends.
of several things. One is we learned about, I'm sorry, what?
They're our friends.
They're our friends. I totally agree. My brother was a banker from the time I was a pup, and he worked in one bank for 50 years. He's the most honorable man I've ever met. Not many people that you know that work for one employer for 50 years. When the government was offering the TARP money to banks, my brother was the CEO of the bank and the chairman of the bank, and he refused the government's money. It's kind of like saying no to the mafia.
Yeah.
He did say no, and the bank is doing very well, thank you. Now, one of the things that we trust in banks is that banks have FDIC.